Government of Ghana for the year ending 31st December 2022. On the authority of His Excellency the President, and in accordance with Articles 179 and 180 of the 1992 Constitution, I present to this House the budget of the President of the Republic of Ghana for the 2022 financial year. I also do submit to this House the following statutory reports. 1, the 2021 annual report on the petroleum funds, in accordance with Section 48 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act 2011, Act 815, as amended, and the 2021 report on the utilization of the African Union levies in accordance with Section 7 of the African Union Import Levies Act 2017, Act 952. Mr. Speaker, this statement is an abridged version of the budget statement and economic policy of the Government of Ghana for the 2022 financial year. I therefore request that the entire budget statement and economic policy of the Government of Ghana for the 2022 financial year be captured in the Hansard. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you and members of the House for prayers accorded me and citizens of the country during my COVID recuperation. Mr. Speaker, exactly 1 year, 8 months, and 5 days today, Ghana confirmed its first case of COVID-19. Since then, efforts to contain the virus and its impact on our lives have dominated the actions of government. Not only here in Ghana, but across the globe. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has swept through the world, has upended and exposed the weaknesses in some of the critical structures and systems in education, health, economic life, communities, and everyday family life. The pandemic triggered a sharp and heavy slump in global supply chains as the lockdowns and restrictions led to reductions in demand and production levels. The pickup in demand for goods this year has also created a new inflationary problem with a consequential rise in the cost of shipping, disruption of the global supply chain, and exacerbated by increase in world fuel prices. Mr. Speaker, the spiraling costs of shipping have hit businesses hard, particularly small and medium-scale enterprises. SMEs have had to struggle with economic fallout from the pandemic, and furthermore, they are now being forced to cope with the rising cost of shipping. This is making the lives of traders and consumers very difficult. The hardship Ghanaians have experienced due to COVID-19 is not lost on the government. We have been there with the people, playing the difficult but necessary balancing act of managing an economy put under extreme distress by the pandemic, and at the same time supporting households and businesses to cope. Our response to COVID-19 thus far has earned domestic and worldwide acclaim, as our President and his fellow Ghanaians will attest to. Mr. Speaker, it has not been easy, and I know that from personal experience. The government has tried its best to save lives and cushion the impact on Ghanaians. It has been tough, but we thank God for His grace and mercy towards us. We empathize with families who lost loved ones during the pandemic, private school teachers who lost income for 12 months, business owners who lost earnings, the thousands of hospitality and tourism sector workers who were laid off, the slump in businesses built around our traditional and other social events, the jobless young people whose strenuous efforts to find work have been further compromised by the pandemic, and the impact on our mental health and well-being, which has also been profound. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency the President has asked me to deliver a special message to our fellow Ghanaians. He says to thank you, the Ghanaian people, for your resilience. To thank you for keeping faith with him and responding to all the measures that were needed to contain the spread of the virus. He wants to assure you that together we are fighting this, and we are fighting this to win together. Mr. Speaker, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had to address both the immediate as well as persistent health and economic impacts of the pandemic. Our response was bold, decisive, and compassionate, but also costly. As a responsible government, allied to the concerns of the people, we have had no choice but to implement critical interventions to take lives and to save lives and jobs, including feeding nearly 2.8 million people with hot meals. We also collaborated with our faith-based organizations to provide 470,000 families with food packages. Mr. Speaker, to mitigate the health impacts of the pandemic, government also employed additional 38,000 nurses. Tax exemptions worth 36.8 million Ghana cedis were also granted to our frontline staff, while 10.1 million and 4.78 million households were provided with free water and electricity, respectively. To facilitate the mass reopening of schools, government provided 11 million students and staff with essential supplies such as face masks, paper towels, liquid soap, and sanitizers, all at great cost. Cooked meals were also provided to final year JHS students in both public and private schools. Mr. Speaker, these have been expensive, but we knew that the cost of doing nothing and disrupting the education of our children for an entire academic year would have been even greater. I'm proud to announce that not a single Ghanaian public sector worker was laid off as a result of the impact of the pandemic on our public finances, and we have managed to pay them monthly, and we are grateful to the unions for their cooperation in this regard. Under the Coronavirus Alleviation Program Business Support Scheme, CAPBACS, Ghana Enterprises Agency provided 302,000 successful applicants across various sectors and regions with loans amounting to 523.11 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, we also ensured payments of our obligations to contractors and provided payroll support to some state-owned enterprises to guarantee jobs. Thankfully, our President led and acted decisively and wisely, and his leadership paved the way for many other countries in Africa and beyond. Mr. Speaker, let me assure the House that we are working hard to get back quickly to the pre-pandemic fiscal and debt trajectory. The fiscal policies implemented to provide relief during the pandemic has led to an increase in total public debt. The situation was made worse by the big drop in revenue collections last year. Total revenues in 2020 fell by 11.93 billion, equivalent to 3.1% of GDP, while total expenditures increased by 14.08 billion, equivalent to 3.7% of GDP. As a result, a budget deficit of 11.7% of GDP was recorded against a target of 4.7% of GDP, including the financial sector and energy sector related expenditure. The budget deficit was 15.0% of GDP. GDP growth also dropped to 0.4% compared to a projected growth rate of 6.8% before the pandemic. This growth, however, compares favorably with the sub-Saharan African average of negative 1.7%. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
honorable members,
we are under no illusion.
Just a bit. The first Deputy Speaker to take the chair.
Beg your pardon? Second chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are under no illusion as to the economic challenges facing our country today, how to ease the suffering of Ghanaians, transform the economy, how to ease the suffering of Ghanaians, transform the economy to create jobs, and share the expected wealth across all households, such as providing security and education, I would keep the President awake at night. How to broaden the revenue base, keep a grip on expenditure, protect the public purse, and at the same time build with urgency the needed infrastructure, collecting revenue, managing our debt and expenditure commitments, and paying the bills to stimulate economic activity are the orders he has given to us, his ministers, and other appointees to carry out over the next 3 years. Mr. Speaker, we know we can get the job done. It is well known that prior to the pandemic, we had stabilized and turned around the economy between January 2017 and March 2020. We had been able to reverse the worrying economic trends we inherited and place the country on a path of fiscal sustainability and growth. We doubled the economic growth rate from 3.4 percentage points to an average of 7% between the period. It is undisputed, Mr. Speaker, that we brought down the fiscal deficit below the 5% threshold. We improved our gross international reserves from 4.9 billion to 9.9 billion, 4.7 months of imports. We provided free SHS for 1.2 million Ghanaian students. We provided free hot meals for 3.4 million public pupils in basic schools. We supported 1.9 million farmers with improved seedlings and fertilizers through our Planting for Food and Jobs program. We provided temporary employment to 100,000 of young people through the NAPCO program. We abolished several Newton taxes. We set the nation on its biggest private sector-owned industrialization program in the history of Ghana with the 1D1F program, and we registered the biggest foreign exchange. Earnings from tourists during our historic 2019 year of return program. By March 2020, Mr. Speaker, our first quarter macro fiscal indicators reflected the turnaround we had accomplished over the 3.5 years. Indeed, we had just experienced an oversubscription of our 3 billion bond issuance and set a record of the longest sovereign Africa bond of 41 years on the international capital markets as a result of strong investor confidence. Mr. Speaker, then COVID struck. This derailed our transformation agenda and eroded the program we had attained the previous year. The focus on the 2021 budget statement and policy presented on 12 March 2021 was therefore anchored on debt sustainability and consolidation while providing some fiscal stimulus. We set out to complete ongoing programs and projects, consolidate the gains from the recovery efforts, and continue our agenda towards the revitalization and transformation of the economy. Today, 17th November 2021, I'm here on behalf of His Excellency the President to provide this august House with an update on progress we have made towards post-pandemic economic recovery following the confidence Ghanaians repose in him with a renewed mandate on 7 December 2020. I also share with you the plan to get us back to pre-pandemic macro stability and growth levels. More importantly, Mr. Speaker, I will share the President's strategy to improve the living standards of Ghanaians and address the central challenge that confronts us today, unemployment. Mr. Speaker, we have no doubt in our capacity as a government to turn things around. We turned around the economic crisis we inherited in 2017. We are turning around the economic crisis. We are turning around the economic crisis the pandemic brought in 2020. The challenge is on, and we are determined to prevail. And with the people behind us and the Almighty on our side, we know we shall prevail. The budget is intentional about building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation through fiscal consolidation and job creation. This may be an uncomfortable transition, but we are people who think deeply. We must progress and become a people who also make things happen for ourselves and the world. We must embrace this challenge, Mr. Speaker, of becoming a vibrant entrepreneurial nation. Mr. Speaker, data on the performance of the economy as at end September 2021 indicate that the implementation of the 2021 budget is largely on track. Provisional GDP data released by the Ghana Statistical Service in September 2021 indicate that overall real GDP grew by 3.1% in Q1 and 3.9% in Q2. Thus, the economy grew by an average of 3.5% in the first half of 2021 against the 0.8% in the same period, 2020. Mr. Speaker, headline inflation declined sharply from 10.4% in December 2020 to 7.5% in May 2021, broadly reflecting well-anchored inflation expectations, exchange rate stability, and favorable food prices. However, inflation picked up to 10.6% in September 2021 on account of stocks from domestic fuel price adjustments and increasing domestic food prices arising partly from climate-related factors, input supply bottlenecks, delayed harvests, and world food price increases. Inflation rose further to 11% in October, driven by non-food inflation. Mr. Speaker, preliminary data for the first 9 months of the year indicate that government's fiscal operations resulted in a cash deficit of 33.9 billion, equivalent to 7.7% of GDP, compared to the revised target of 32.6 billion, equivalent to 7.4% of GDP. The fiscal adjustments to save lives and preserve livelihoods during the pandemic, although well-intentioned, have elevated global debt levels. The situation in Ghana is no different. The provisional nominal debt stock, including financial sector bailout costs and energy sector IPP payments, stood at 341.76 billion, equivalent to 77.5% of GDP as at end September 2021, up from 291.63 billion, equivalent to 76.1% in December 2020. Notwithstanding the elevated deficit and public debt levels recorded due to COVID-19, our macro-fiscal indicators are much better than what we inherited. Inflation reduced from 15.4% at the end of 2016 to 7.9% at the end of 2019 and stood at 11% at end October 2021. Interest rate 91-day Treasury bills declined from 16.4% at the end of 2017 to 14.69% at the end of 2019 and further to 12.46% at the end of October 2021. Gross international reserves increased from 2.8 months of imports at the end of 2016 to 4 months of imports at the end of 2019 and further to 4.9 months of imports at the end of September 2021. while fiscal deficit reduced from 6.5% of GDP at the end of 2016 to 4.8% of GDP at the end of 2019. Primary balance, Mr. Speaker, improved from a deficit of reduced from 1.1% of GDP at the end of 2017 to a primary surplus of 0.8% of GDP at the end of 2019. GDP grew from 3.4% at the end of 2016 to 6.5% at the end of 2019. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the medium-term macroeconomic targets. A new medium-term National Development Policy Framework 2022 to 2025 has been drafted to guide the medium-term economic recovery and transformation for the country. This is consistent with the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda and is informed by a COVID-19 response strategy outlined in the Ghana Cares Obatampa program to enable us build forward better. Mr. Speaker, the broad macroeconomic goals to support the medium-term objectives include: 1. Restoration of macroeconomic stability with a focus on fiscal consolidation and debt sustainability. 2. Maintaining a healthy balance between the implementation of the Revitalization and Transformation Program and fiscal consolidation to promote growth within a stable macroeconomic environment. 3. Providing an environment that is supportive of private sector, including promoting entrepreneurship for domestic businesses and for FDI to thrive. 4. Building a robust financial sector to support growth and development. 5. Deepening structural reforms to make the machinery of government work more efficiently and effectively to support socio-economic transformation. 6. Implementing reforms to increase revenue mobilization and the efficiency of public expenditure. And 7. Plugging leakages and prosecution of offenders. Mr. Speaker, guided by the medium-term policy objectives, the following macroeconomic targets are set for the medium term, 2022 to 2025. 1. Overall real GDP to grow at an average rate of 5.6%. 2. Non-oil GDP to grow at an average rate of 5.9%. 3. End of December inflation to be within the target band of 8 plus or minus 2%. 4. Overall fiscal balance and primary balance to return to the fiscal responsibility at threshold targets by 2024, i.e. fiscal deficit of not more than 5% of GDP and a positive primary balance. And gross international reserves to cover at least 4 months of imports. Mr. Speaker, based on the macroeconomic objectives and the medium-term targets, the following macroeconomic targets are set for 2022. Overall real GDP growth of 5.8%, non-oil real GDP growth of 5.9%, end December inflation rate of 8%, fiscal deficit of 7.4%. Primary surplus of 0.1% of GDP and gross international reserves to cover not less than 4 months of imports. Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grants for 2022 is projected to rise above 100 billion for the first time, 100.5 billion Ghana cedis, equivalent to 20% of GDP, up from a projected outturn of 70.3 billion, equivalent to 16% of GDP for 2021. Domestic revenue estimated at 99.5 billion and represents an annual growth of 44% over the projected outturn for 2021. Mr. Speaker, the resource mobilization for 2022 is underpinned by revenue policy initiatives. The increase in domestic revenue by 44% is as a result of the impact of a major progressive tax policy, complemented by improvements in tax compliance and reforms in revenue administration that we have outlined in this budget. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure, including clearance of arrears, is projected at 137.5 billion, equivalent to 27.4% of GDP. The estimate for 2022 represents a growth of 23.2% above the projected outturn of 111.6 billion Ghana cedis, equivalent to 25.3% of GDP for 2021. The key drivers of expenditure growth include capital expenditure, funding of key government flagship programs, wage bills, and interest payments. Mr. Speaker, based on the estimates of total revenue and grants and total expenditure, the 2022 fiscal operations will result in an overall fiscal deficit of Ghana 37 billion, equivalent to 7.4% of GDP. This includes the financial sector and energy sector IPP payments. This represents a nominal year-on-year reduction of about 30.7% over the projected outturn of 12.1% of GDP in 2021. The corresponding primary balance of 435 million Ghana cedis, equivalent to 0.1% of GDP, is also projected for next year. The signaling is clear. We are going to judiciously work our way out of our debt situation. Mr. Speaker, total foreign financing of the deficit, as well as exceptional financing, namely the IMF special drawing rights, would amount to 9.1 billion, equivalent to 1.8% of GDP, and will include a planned international financing program of 750 billion for liability management and budget support, particularly capital expenditure. On the other hand, financing of the deficit from domestic sources, including net issuances from debt, will amount to 27.9 billion, equivalent to 5.6% of GDP. The additional exceptional financing from the utilization of the newly allocated SDRs by the IMF will augment and reduce domestic borrowing needs. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we still rely heavily on debt financing to meet a significant portion of our expenditures compared to our peers. It is instructive to note that on the expenditure side, for instance, interest payments and compensation payments alone amounted to 48.7 billion, which is 103.3% of total revenue and grants for January to September 2021. In fact, Mr. Speaker, these two expenditure items absorb all the revenue collected for the period. This trend must be reversed. Mr. Speaker, a key focus of the budget is fiscal consolidation to enhance debt and fiscal sustainability as we implement our economic revitalization and transformation post-COVID-19 to save more lives from the COVID pandemic and better the lives of Ghanaians. It is for this reason that government is proposing for the consideration and approval of Parliament the revenue-enhancing and expenditure rationalization measures in this budget. Indeed, the approval and implementation of the measures will lead to significant fiscal adjustment from a projected fiscal deficit, including energy, IPP payments, and FinSec cleanup costs of 12.1% of GDP in 2021 to 7.4% in 2022, representing a strong adjustment of 4.7 percentage points in just 1 year. Mr. Speaker, not only are we significantly bringing the fiscal deficit down, we are posting a primary surplus of 0.1% of GDP in 2022 from a negative primary balance of 4.7% in 2021. We are confident, though, that the needed fiscal space to continue to support broad-based inclusive growth will not elude us. Mr. Speaker, as a people, we are very proud of our history and heritage. We believe in our ability to be self-sustaining. After all, we are a country that became the world's largest producer of cocoa, with farmers working on small farmlands. These farmers bring in some $2 billion annually. We believe in our capability to mobilize the resources, human, natural, and domestic finances to transform our lives. This will require that we share the burden so that every adult Ghanaian will contribute to the delivery of critical infrastructure, social services, and improve lives. This revenue mobilization must be a collective effort, and we must all contribute to make this a reality. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Statistical Services has completed a preliminary report on the 2021 population and housing census. The census provided useful information that would inform the effective planning and implementation of government policies. However, the data presented also shows some trends that need to be addressed to build a more equitable society. Interestingly, out of the total population of 30.8 million, only 2,364,348 persons are bearing the burden of the entire population as taxpayers as at August 2021. Registered voter population of 17,027,941 as at 2020. Only 1,643,839 persons are captured by SNIT as active contributors to Tier 1 pensions, and 2.1 million, less than 10% of the total population, as active contributors to Tier 2 as of June 2021. Only 45,109 entities are registered as corporate taxpayers. Only 54,364 persons are registered as self-employed taxpayers at the Ghana Revenue Authority, and only 136,198 entities are registered businesses at the Registrar General's Department as of August 2021, of which 80% are self-employed. Mr. Speaker, compared to our peers within the middle income brackets, these statistics are a poor reflection on us, and we need to change the narrative. We must resolve by the next census, we should have changed these statistics to become an upper middle income country in line with our Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. We must far eclipse the 20% threshold of revenue to GDP ratio of our West African peers by 2024. Mr. Speaker, below are the regional breakdown of tax contributions from 2017 to 2021. Mr. Speaker, Greater Accra contributes almost 90% of our domestic tax, and Ashanti, Western, and Eastern regions together contribute barely 3% of domestic taxes. Mr. Speaker, domestic revenue mobilization is the key to making the vision of Ghana Beyond Aid a reality. We cannot, therefore, as a nation, continue to depend on only 8.2% of our citizens to carry the burden of 30.8 million people. This is unsustainable and defeats all the tenets of economic prudence and moral justice. Our resolve to use revenue policy to support local industry and generate the desired environment for growth has not waned. In the coming year, government will introduce measures that will revamp the industry and make their products competitive in both the local and international markets. In this respect, it has become increasingly necessary to make some policy changes. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, VAT relief was provided on African prints for textile manufacturers to enable them resuscitate their operations and provide affordable textiles on the market. The policy has succeeded in stabilizing the industry and formed the basis for a modest increase in production. The companies have also maintained their prices over the period, making the cost of local prints affordable. Additionally, they've been able to keep their employees and made some investment in the industry as a result of this policy. To consolidate the gains and expand production in the industry, government has decided to extend the relief for a further 2 years. Mr. Speaker, the VAT flat rate of 3% of the sale price of goods was introduced in 2017 on the supply of goods by wholesalers and retailers. Subsequent reforms to the taxes on the supply of goods and services have made local goods with imported substitutes uncompetitive. Government is correcting this anomaly by limiting the flat rate to only retailers. All other supply of goods and services will attract the standard rate. The object of the flat rate is to provide a simplified system for small-scale enterprises. To ensure that this objective is achieved, the rate will be applied to retailers with annual turnover not exceeding 500,000 Ghana cedis. All other retailers and wholesalers will be charged the standard rate. After 2.5 years of operation, the temporary benchmark discount policy on imports introduced as a stopgap measure has been reviewed to make it more efficient and better targeted. This is consistent with government policy to promote local industry and improve foreign exchange earnings. We are committed to a program of turning our enterprising traders into manufacturers of widgets, tools, and other machinery necessary as inputs for our industrial growth. Mr. Speaker, revenue compliance and enforcement sits at the heart of domestic revenue mobilization. The Ghana Revenue Authority, buoyed by the Revenue Assurance and Compliance Enforcement, will continue race with its enhanced compliance measures to expand coverage and plug revenue leakages. The modified taxation system introduced in 2015 through the Income Tax Act 2015 Act 896 is to provide a simplified system of tax compliance for the informal sector and small-scale individuals in business. This law will be amended to increase the threshold from 200,000 to 500,000 Ghana cedis per annum. Exports of unprocessed gold by small-scale miners through official channels have dwindled from over 1,600,000 ounces in 2019 to below 100,000 ounces as of September 2021 through smuggling. To stem this tide, government, in consultation with the stakeholders in the industry, has decided to reduce the withholding tax rate for sale of unprocessed gold by small-scale miners on whom the incidence of the tax is from 3% to 1.5%. Government is committed to working with the relevant agencies and stakeholders in the industry to ensure compliance at a reduced rate of 1.5%. Mr. Speaker, property rates have the potential to increase revenue mobilization for MMDAs and release resources for provision of basic infrastructure as well as the needs of our localities. Property rate assessment and collection pose a challenge to most MMDAs and are fraught with inefficiencies. Government through GRA will from January 2022 assist the MMDAs to implement a common platform for property rate administration to enhance property rate collections and its accountability. To ensure cost recovery by government in providing infrastructure for the collection of the rate, a sharing ratio will be agreed with the assemblies. Fees and charges. Government will complete its work of this House to pass the fees and charges bill for implementation in 2022. These fees and charges will be subject to automatic adjustment consistent with the annual average inflation as announced by the Ghana Statistical Service. A comprehensive review will be conducted after every 5th year, taking into consideration other factors besides inflation, including improvement in quality of service delivery and privatization of some of the services where feasible. Mr. Speaker, our roads need fixing and building. Our roads are being fixed. It is true that more roads have been fixed and are being fixed over the last 5 years than any relative period in the entire history of our nation. We even want to do a lot more, and this budget will cater for this. That is why for decades, governments after governments imposed and maintain tolls on some public roads to raise funds for road construction and maintenance. This is the situation in many countries. However, over the years, the tolling points have become unhealthy market centers, led to heavy traffic on our roads, lengthened travel time from one place to the other, and impacted negatively on productivity. The congestion generated at the tolling points, besides creating these inconveniences, also leads to pollution in and around the vicinities. To address these challenges, government has abolished all tolls on public roads and bridges. This takes effect immediately the budget is approved on appropriation. The toll collection personnel will be reassigned. The expected impact on productivity and reduced environmental pollution will more than offset the revenue foregone by removing the tolls. Tolls, Mr. Speaker, would be abolished on all public roads. Mr. Speaker, over the past 18 months, it has become clear that if the African continent is to be globally competitive, it must embrace the common vision of creating an integrated and inclusive digital society that improves the quality of life of citizens, strengthens the development of the private sector, and advances Africa's quest to attain the Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Speaker, digitization is empowering. It has catalyzed financial inclusion. It mobilizes resources and directs it where it is needed. Tens of billions of Ghanaian cedis are mobilized every month by people previously presumed too poor to open and keep a traditional bank account or even operate a mobile phone. With millions of Ghanaians tapping into the convenience of simplified online paying systems, transactions that used to take place on the blind side of the central bank is now fully visible. It is contributing to the formalization of our economy, a subject about which so much had been said for years, but which so little had been actually done. With digitization, state institutions are more able to plug revenue leakages and thus increase internally generated funds. That gives them the capacity to potentially pay their workers better wages and reduce borrowing by central government for capital expenditure because they can go to a bank on the strength of their own books and so reduce the country's debt overhang over time. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana.gov initiative and its performance also indicate the opportunity to harness increases in captured economic actors from 4% to 84%, which creates a real chance to achieve the intended expansion of the tax net. Currently, we have 49 institutions of transactions through Ghana.gov. However, the number of institutions expected to go live by end November 2021 is 165. The total value of transactions from May 2021 to October 2021 amounted to 34 billion. We believe this initiative will be truly transformative of our revenue mobilization and service delivery agenda. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 contributed to the acceleration of the digitalization of Africa. Data from the Bank of Ghana confirms a growing trend in online trade. The data showed that between February 2020 and February 2021 alone, Ghana saw an increase of over 120% in the value of digital transactions compared to 44% for the period February 2019 to February 2020. Apart from the convenience online trading offers, the surge has happened globally was primarily due to the increase in the use of digital platforms as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Total value of transactions for 2020 was estimated to be over 500 billion Ghana cedis compared to 78 billion cedis in 2016, just 5 years ago. While total money subscribers and active mobile money users have grown by an average rate of 18% and 16% respectively between 2016 and 2019. Mr. Speaker, it has become clear that there is this enormous potential to increase tax revenue by bringing into the tax bracket transactions that could be best defined as being undertaken in the informal economy. After considerable deliberation, government has decided to place a levy on all electronic transactions to widen the tax net and rope in the informal sector. This shall be known as the Electronic Transaction Levy or e-levy. Mr. Speaker, electronic transactions covering mobile money payments. Mr. Speaker,
honourable members, order.
Electronic mobile money payments, bank transfers, merchant payments, and e-mode remittances will be charged at an applicable rate of 1.75%, which shall be borne by the sender, except e-mode remittances, which will be borne by the recipient. Mr. Speaker, to safeguard efforts being made to enhance financial inclusion and protect the vulnerable, all transactions that add up to 100 Ghana cedis or less per day, which is approximately 3,000 Ghana cedis per month, will be exempt from this levy. A portion of the proceeds from the e-levy will be used to support entrepreneurship, youth employment, cybersecurity, digital and road infrastructure, among others. Mr. Speaker, taxi eyabako yinina bitia. This tax is one, and we shall all pay. Mr. Speaker, this new policy also comes into effect once appropriation is passed on 1st January 2022. Government will work with all industry partners to ensure that their systems and payment platforms are configured to implement this policy.
And they will make money from there.
Mr. Speaker, burden sharing. The good people of Ghana have given us a mandate to get things done. For us as a government, this is a clarion call for a new deal, a chance to renew the social contract of our democracy. As Rainbow Neighbor once said, and I quote, "Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime, therefore we must be saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history, therefore we must be saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone, therefore we are saved by love. Therefore we need to act together as each other's keeper after the unprecedented shock that the pandemic was for the world and for Ghana. We owe each other to share the burden of the recovery. Citizens that have not suffered as much a loss of income during the pandemic ought to sacrifice for the rest. Citizens should be called upon to look beyond their own self-interest and work for a great common interest. Our country needs this sacrifice. This budget calls upon the wealthy and the middle class to do their part through property taxes, through streamlined exemptions bills, through the removal of benchmark values as selected imported goods, and through targeted digital tax. In doing so, they will also look after future generations by limiting debt accumulation. Mr. Speaker, after undergoing several reviews, the exemption bill has been completed and laid before Parliament. We will work with this House for final passage and implementation in 2022. Mr. Speaker, we wish to reiterate that we are in challenging times which require radical measures, so let us embrace these new policies to enable government to address the fundamental issues affecting the economy, to ensure that our nation continues to maintain its position as the black star of the continent. The good people of Ghana has given us a mandate to get things done. For us, as a government, this is a clarion call for a new deal, a chance to renew the social contract. Mr. Speaker, we are building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation. The census results put Ghana's population figure at 30.8 million. And of this number, 42.8% constitutes the adult population above 18 years, while 58.2% constitute the population below 18 years. Mr. Speaker, with this youthful population, there's an urgent need to provide the necessary environment for the private sector. In this regard, government will implement a major intervention to empower existing private sector businesses to be robust and dynamic, to expand and create jobs, while giving a strong hand up to the youth. Mr. Speaker, in the past 15 years, successive governments have endeavored to implement various employment schemes to partially address the unemployment situation in the country. In 2006, President Kufuor initiated the Youth Employment Scheme, which provided meaningful employment avenues to many of our youth. Since then, we have implemented a number of such schemes, with the current ones being NAPCO, 100,000 youth covered, YEA, 80,538 beneficiaries, afforestation, 44,682 youth engaged, National Alternative Employment and Livelihood Program. In addition, government has employed some 295,000 into the public sector payroll since 2017 alone, and in 2021 alone, financial clearance totaling 72,825 has been granted. Mr. Speaker, in spite of these efforts, we continue to have a huge number of our young people without jobs. Mr. Speaker, this budget is redefining our development paradigm by focusing on the private sector, particularly on entrepreneurship development. We will build an entrepreneurial nation by aggressively implementing programs that empowers the majority of our young people to employ their God-given talents, to take risks and become job creators instead of job seekers.
Honorable Minister, honorable members, having regards to the state of the business of the House, I direct that the House sits outside the regular sitting hours. You may continue. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the pursuit of this objective, we will address the challenges our existing and aspiring entrepreneurs face. These challenges include access to credit and finance, regulatory and tax burdens, lack of skills, as well as mentorship. We will do this whilst intensifying our efforts to support the private sector to expand and create jobs. Mr. Speaker, this understanding of the youth employment challenge, as well as extensive consultations of stakeholders, including youth associations and educational institutions across the country, have led to the development of what we call the Youth Start Initiative. Youth Start Initiative, which proposes to use 1 billion Ghana cedis each year. Proposes to use 1 billion Ghana cedis each year to catalyze an ecosystem to create 1 million jobs, and in partnership with the financial institutions and development partners, raise another 2 billion Ghana cedis over the 3-year period. In addition, Mr. Speaker, our local banks have agreed to a package that will result in increasing their SME portfolio up to 5 billion Ghana cedis over the next 3 years. This, Mr. Speaker, results in an unprecedented, historic 10 billion cedi commitment in the next 3 years to the private sector and the Youth Start program over the next 3 years. Mr. Speaker, implementing partners of the Youth Start. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Enterprises Agency, the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program, and partner financial institutions will serve as the implementing arm of Youth Start. Entrepreneurs will be able to apply for support through a dedicated Youth Start online port line. NEIP will also engage our faith-based organizations as partners for the delivery of essential artisanal skills, business competitions, and feasibility studies, and introduction to financing institutions with a commitment of up to 10% of GOG's contribution to the Youth Start program. Mr. Speaker, Youth Start will provide our youth with the following: training, skills development, entrepreneurial support, and business advisory services, funding, access to competitive credit and startup packs, enterprise promotion, mentoring, and access to markets, including portals to facilitate digital linkages between youth-led enterprises and other businesses and relevant government agencies. Youth Start products, Mr. Speaker. Youth Start will support youth-led enterprises with the following products: district-level loans under 10,000 Ghana cedis after 2 to 3 months of training, soft loans of up to 50,000 Ghana cedis to help startups, in particular by young graduates and school leavers, and small businesses to expand. Startup packs, soft loans tied to equipment acquisition of up to 50,000 cedis for individuals and 100,000 for associations and groups. A standardized loan package of between 100,000 to 400,000 are concessional rates for SMEs through financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, the Youth Start initiative aims to support our youth to develop commercially viable businesses. To this end, Youth Start is designed to instill proper commercial orientation in the beneficiaries. This will include financial institutions determining the credit matrix, and GEA and NEIP providing training support, especially for the standardized SME loans Youth Start will operationalize by March 2022. Mr. Speaker, it is well known that ours is a pro-private sector government. We strongly believe in the private sector leading in growing the economy and creating jobs. We have demonstrated, Mr. Speaker, this commitment over the past 5 years through policy actions and investment that created macro stability, built our human capacity, and strengthened our financial architecture, and will continue to do more in the coming year. Government will continue to streamline the policy and regulatory environment for doing business in the country. I would like to acknowledge our businesses and employers for their resilience and for pulling through the last year and a half despite the severe challenges of COVID-19. Most of you went to great lengths to find innovative ways to keep your businesses going and to hold on and preserve jobs. Government greatly appreciates your efforts. We'll continue to provide support to the CARES Guarantee Scheme, GERSEL, and other initiatives to facilitate the expansion and growth of our already existing businesses. In addition, though, guarantees provided by GERSEL, government is facilitating access to loans for agribusinesses. Over the past year, GERSEL, working with banks, has facilitated production and export expansion in a number of agribusinesses. Mr. Speaker, permit me to extend gratitude to the leadership of the commercial banks who engaged the President in October 2021. I'm happy to report that as a result, the meeting, the Ghana Bankers Association, working with the various banks, have resolved to collectively accelerate their portfolio allocation to qualifying SMEs to fast-track our phase of economic recovery post-COVID-19. My ministry is working with the Ghana Bankers Association to conclude the terms to ensure the facilitation of the 500 billion Ghana cedis over the next 3 years. In addition, the banking industry, Mr. Speaker, has committed 75 million Ghana cedis over the next 3 years to collectively engage in skills development programs for a minimum of 150,000 young graduates and youth entrepreneurs by engaging in activities. To achieve this, the banks have pledged to review the internal processes and procedures to facilitate easier access to credit by SMEs. Mr. Speaker, a 10 billion facility for 3 years will completely revamp the state of our SMEs and will ensure that our youth have jobs and youth become job creators and not only job seekers, even as the private sector expands to be able to absorb more of them. Mr. Speaker, I have great news. On Friday, November 12, 2021, the good governor of the Bank of Ghana formally handed over the license for the Development Bank of Ghana. With the establishment of the Development Bank of Ghana, which is being capitalized at, Mr. Speaker, $1 billion US, of which we have already gotten $800 million now. With the establishment of the Development Bank of Ghana, government will provide a powerful response to a long-standing desire of our businesses to easier access to medium and long-term loans at affordable interest rates. Not only will the Development Bank of Ghana, as a wholesale bank, provide loans to financial institutions, it will also provide partial credit guarantees to complement the efforts of GERSEL in agriculture and agribusiness. Mr. Speaker, following the extensive financial sector reforms, coupled with the establishment of the Development Bank of Ghana, the conversion of the Ghana Amalgamated Trust into a permanent investment vehicle we now have a robust financial ecosystem that will support businesses from early stage to mature stage. Mr. Speaker, the NAPCO program was designed as a temporary stepping stone for young graduates for a period of 3 years. In the last 3 years, 100,000 young graduates have benefited from the NAPCO program. With over 33,000 trainees already securing jobs, government will work to ensure that the remaining NAPCO trainees are effectively supported to take advantage of the opportunities USAS presents. Mr. Speaker, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, government under the able leadership of His Excellency President Akufo-Addo quickly developed a 100 billion COVID-19 alleviation and revitalization enterprise program, what we call the Ghana Cares Obatampe program. This blueprint, which brought instant and significant relief to our people, is revitalizing our nation by improving the business climate, supporting the private sector, and providing job opportunities for the youth. Mr. Speaker, the revitalization of the Cares Obatampe program has 3 key thrusts. The first is to support the private sector, particularly in agribusiness and manufacturing, ICT, and digitization. The second thrust is to aggressively support entrepreneurship in order to create job opportunities for our growing and increasing educated youth. The third thrust is to optimize implementation of government transformation agenda for greater results. Since its launch in November 2020, the Obatampe program has targeted strategic management and technical interventions in the agriculture, manufacturing, trade, and export sectors. The urgent and transformative vision of the CARES program implied that we could not proceed with a business-as-usual approach. We therefore swiftly adopted the compact framework to strongly link resources to results. As at the end of July 2021, 8 implementation compacts were signed between the Ministry of Finance and participating MDAs. Mr. Speaker, our priority is to facilitate investment and development of communication infrastructure, including integration and leveraging of data systems and platforms. Government is working towards enhancing the capacity of key institutions and strengthening coordination with the private sector. With the private sector for improved service delivery, business expansion, and economic transformation. This is consistent with the vision of the President to bridge the digital divide and make technology a driver of our socio-economic progress. Government is making significant progress towards our digitization drive. We are happy to announce that to date, we have issued unique identification cards to over 11.6 million Ghanaians. The second phase of the National Digital Property Addressing System, as well as the establishment of a National Digital Property Register, are complete. Mr. Speaker, with the expansion of digital financial platforms, including mobile money and its interoperability with the banking system, we are increasing financial inclusion. We are also in the process of digitizing the health records of Ghanaians and creating a national digital platform for the sale of pharmaceutical products to improve the efficiency of our healthcare. Mr. Speaker, our plan to establish a comprehensive government-wide database and register as a reference platform a management system for all government digital assets was set in motion with stakeholder engagements. We are currently awaiting the outcome of the preliminary assessment to inform the next step. Mr. Speaker, government will fast-track efforts to upgrade the Kumasi, Tamale, and secondly Takoradi Regional Innovation Center for digital centers. The upgrade is to facilitate the building of ICT capacity, provide support to startups to boost job creation, and enhance the drive for knowledge and socio-economic growth. climate action and sustainable transition to a low-carbon economy. Mr. Speaker, having launched our updated nationally determined contribution at the recently ended COP26, Ghana has reaffirmed its readiness to leverage its natural resources to fund a sustainable transition to a low-carbon economy. This will be done by facilitating private sector participation in low-carbon activities and industries in a manner that generates more jobs for Ghanaians and improves our general well-being. In the course of the last 2 decades, we have adopted several policies and programs aimed at restoring our lost forests. Between 2002 and 2020, under the National Forest Plantation Development Program and the Ghana Forest Plantation Strategy, some 588,000 hectares of plantation have been established. Again, through the Youth Reforestation Program, we are committed to reclaiming some 7.6 million hectares of degraded forests and farmlands. Government is committed to promoting climate adaptation activities. We will collaborate with the Global Center on Adaptation in close collaboration with the African Development Bank in pioneering solutions on how to build durable infrastructure and supporting African cities to guard against the impact of climate change. We are also working with the private sector with the assistance of the Green Climate Fund to establish a multi-million-dollar green fund to support our climate adaptation interventions. We shall, Mr. Speaker, in addition, work with our traditional authorities and districts to issue innovative mini-muni adaptation bonds to address issues of reclamation and reforestation in their specific localities. This will be innovative and the first in Africa. From 2024 and beyond, we aim to reduce emissions by some 10 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in the cocoa forest landscape. Through the implementation of the Ghana Cocoa Forest RED program, one of the 5 ecological landscape-tailored programs in Ghana's RED Plus strategy. Government, through her nationally determined contribution in the forestry sector, is committed to supporting the global target of halving emissions by 2030 and attaining neutrality by 2050. Ghana is also committed to the Forest Agriculture Commodity Trade Fact dialogue process, and she affirms her resolve to support the development and implementation of the FACT roadmap actions. We are determined to operationalize the timber legality assurance system as part of the forest law enforcement, governance, and trade processes, which will enable us to track wood electronically to ensure that only legally compliant timber is allowed into any market. Mr. Speaker, government will continue its transformative flagship programs. In education, Mr. Speaker, the government continues the implementation of the government's flagship free SHS program. A total of 425,000 first-year students enrolled, bringing the total intake to 1.26 million students. In addition, first-year students receive the underlisted items as part of the implementation of the free SHS program: 4 million exercise books, 1.8 million notebooks, 395,000 physical education kits, 1.7 million cartridge arch paper, 35,000 water-based acrylic paints, 28,000 technical drawing boards, and 28,000 sets of technical instruments. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, we completed 118 projects made out of classroom, dormitory, administration block, libraries, and canteens at the secondary education level. The number of completed projects under the free senior high school infrastructure intervention stand at 657 out of a total of 1,119 projects from GET Fund and other funding sources. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana School Feeding Program fed some 3.5 million pupils in 10,832 public basic schools with one hot nutritious meal every school-going day in 2021. This number will increase to all primary school students in the coming year. The program provided employment for some 32,496 caterers and created a ready market for local farmers. Mr. Speaker, the LEAP program paid 5 cycles of cash grants to 344,000 households and registered 76% of all LEAP beneficiaries onto the National Health Insurance Scheme. In 2022, government will facilitate the disbursement of the bi-monthly cash grants to beneficiaries. LEAP beneficiaries assessed to be above the extreme poverty line will be graduated into a productive livelihood inclusion program. Mr. Speaker, government has rolled out an aggressive vaccination program to protect Ghanaian lives from COVID-19. Sustained efforts have seen about 2 million Ghanaians receiving a single dose of 825,706 fully vaccinated as of September 2021. We will not relent, Mr. Speaker, until our goal of vaccinating 20 million Ghanaians is attained. Our supply of some 9 million vaccines are now assured and will mobilize to meet this goal to protect our people. Mr. Speaker, in line with the vision to improve equitable access to health facilities, the government will accelerate the implementation of Agenda 111, Mr. Speaker, comprising 101 district hospitals, 7 regional hospitals, and 3 psychiatric hospitals. Mr. Speaker, already we have 50% of contractors having been given and handed over their cadastral plans and hospital sites for them to begin work. The government in works in housing. The government will initiate a program to subsidize the cost of horizontal site and services development in selected areas. On the supply side, traditional authorities and districts will provide land to developers, and tax incentives and exemptions will come from government. On the demand side, government is establishing a national home ownership fund to support mortgage schemes and REITs, while also promoting rent-to-own schemes in the country. To scale up, we commence engagement with participating financial institutions to promote residential rent-to-own schemes and to support the development of a private sector mortgage refinance institution. With the support of the Obatampa Ghana Cares program, the National Home Ownership Fund is facilitate the use of innovative products to tap into pension funds and other long-term funds to support home ownership in Ghana. Trade and industry. A total of 278 1D1F projects are at various stages of implementation, out of which 106 factories are operational. The companies that are currently operational have created a total of 156,782 direct and indirect jobs, 17,451 of which were created in 2021. It is expected, Mr. Speaker, that the completion of the 1D1F projects currently under construction and in the pipeline will create additional 131,817 direct and indirect jobs in 134 districts across the country. Mr. Speaker, trading under the Africa Continental Continental Free Trade Agreement commenced on 1st January 2021, and Ghana was the first country to establish a customs procedure code to facilitate FTA. A comprehensive national policy and action plan aimed at medium to large-scale companies in Ghana to export to the AfCFTA market was developed and is being implemented. To this end, 180 companies were identified to receive support to export to markets under the AfCFTA and other preferential trade agreement areas. Mr. Speaker, food and agriculture. To increase productivity and incomes, as well as improve livelihoods of beneficiary farmers, the government procured and distributed some 31,707 metric tons of improved seeds as of September 2021. In addition, 259,500 metric tons of various fertilizers were also distributed to planting for food and drought beneficiaries across the country. Under the Savannah Agriculture Productivity Improvement, the government developed 1,000 hectares of farmland in Badimblesi, Kojokwe, for rice production, which are estimated to yield about 40% above the national average production of 2.5 to 3 metric tons in lowland valleys. Mr. Speaker, to ensure safe launching and landing of artisanal fishing, as well as create and maintain hygienic environment and job opportunities within the fishing communities, government will continue with the construction of the 14 fishing landing sites, which are various stages of completion. Government expects to complete approximately 60% of this in 2022. Mr. Speaker, to improve revenue generation and management at the local level, government rolled out the district-level revenue DL-Rev software in 114 metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies across the country. 2022, we will roll out the software in the remaining MMDAs to improve on their revenue mobilization. Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program. Mr. Speaker, government will focus on completing the almost 5,000 ongoing projects under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program in 2020. So far, a total of 30 out of the 1,000 mechanized water systems, as well as 507 small F dams out of the 560 targeted, have been completed under the One Village, One Dam initiative. All the 50 rural markets targeted under the agriculture component have been completed. Furthermore, 451 additional constituency projects, which cut across all sectors such as health, education, agriculture, roads, and security, have been completed and are in use by the beneficiary communities. Mr. Speaker, we commit to completing all the projects in the next 2 years. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, Ghana will participate in the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham and continue preparatory activities towards organizing and hosting the 13th Africa Games in Accra in 2023. Government will procure sports logistics and equipment and begin the construction of a new multi-purpose sports hall, hostel facilities, and Olympic-sized swimming pool at Boteman in Accra. Mr. Speaker, some stadia across the country were renovated in 2021 and at various stages of completion as follows. Accra Sports Stadium, 98%, Phase 1 of Babayara Stadium, 98%. Esipon Stadium, 90% complete. Cape Coast Stadium, 60%. In 2022, government will continue the construction of the Abreu and the new Edubiasi Sports Stadia, as well as commence the rehabilitation of the Sunyani Coronation Park Stadium. Mr. Speaker, government continues to expand power generation capacity to meet domestic, commercial, and industrial needs of customers. In this regard, construction work on the 200-megawatt phase of the 400-megawatt early power project continued in 2021. Construction works for Stage 1A are 99.7% complete, and works for the Stage 18 combined cycle are 93% complete. In 2022, a joint venture partner will be engaged to undertake the repowering of the T3 power project with VRA. Mr. Speaker, to ensure power is affordable for industrial, commercial, and residential use, government, in collaboration with key stakeholders, continued with the renegotiation and restructuring of power purchase agreements. Government has reached agreements with some IPPs to convert power plants to tolling structures, switch to natural gas, as well as reduce tariffs. This is expected to result in considerable savings to government and the nation over the remaining lifespan of the PPAs. These savings are expected to come from a combination of reduced capacity and energy charges across the portfolio. Mr. Speaker, in pursuit of the President's aspiration to achieve universal coverage of electricity by 2024, a total of 162 communities were connected to the national grid, thereby increasing the national electricity asset rate from 85.7% in 2020 to 86.63% in 2021. Connections to another 512 communities are at various stages of completion. In 2022, we'll work to complete many such projects, and approximately 800 towns will be connected to the national grid under the SHEP 4, SHEP 5, and turnkey projects. The government, Mr. Speaker, is committed to using indigenous entrepreneurs to complete these projects. Additionally, government will select 2,401 communities with a population of 400 and above to be connected to the national grid. Mr. Speaker, as part of the strategy to electrify island communities and hard-to-reach areas with renewable energy technologies, the construction of 3 mini-grids at Azepe, Aflevi, and Alopem Islands in the Adan East District of the Greater Accra region commenced and are expected to be completed in 2022. In addition, government will construct 10 mini-grids in 10 island communities, as well as supply and install solar home systems in 20 island and lakeside communities in 2022. Mr. Speaker, on roads, we have found through this tax a reliable method of funding our roads. As at the end of September 2021, routine maintenance was carried out on 21,165 kilometers of the trunk road network, 6,265 kilometers of the feeder road network, and 2,937 kilometers of the urban road network. Mr. Speaker, development works progressed steadily on several major projects. The Pokwa interchange under the Accra Urban Transport Project, which involved the construction of a 4-tier interchange, the only one in Africa, construction of 12 kilometers of selected roads, segregated walkways, footbridges, underpasses, and drainage structures was completed and commissioned on July 9, 2021. Major pipeline projects that are expected to take off in 2022 include Accra-Kumasi dualization, Kumasi South and Western Bypass, Kumasi Outer Ring Road, Mount Koforidua Road, Oyibi Dodua Somenya Kuse Junction Road, Accra Outer Ring Road, Asuchari Junction Volleyball Bridge, Eastern Corridor Road, Solar Wa Road, construction of 5 interchanges in the Greater Kumasi metropolitan area, including Swame, Santase, Airport Runabout, and Ofori Chrome. Mr. Speaker, in addition, our public-private partnership program for the financing, construction, and management of road infrastructure has 3 projects at different stages of preparation. Accra Tema Motorway PPP projects, the financing arrangements are being completed and construction will commence in 2022. Accra Cape Coast Takoradi PPP projects, the feasibility study is being finalized. The final feasibility study report will provide key inputs into the Abidjan-Lagos Corridor project. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Infrastructure and Investment Fund, Mr. Speaker, will be looking at financing most of these PPP roads as government gives them support and have efficiency in its delivery. Mr. Speaker, for road safety, government in 2022 will increase and maintain traffic signals. In addition, road safety hazard sites are also expected to be created. This will be complemented with aggressive public education and enforcement of traffic regulations. Mr. Speaker, on security, in accordance with the Cybersecurity Act 2020 at 1038, the Cybersecurity Authority was officially inaugurated on 1st October 2021. With the passage of the Act, CSA will execute the various functions enshrined in the Act. Government will develop a critical information infrastructure database, government digitalization initiatives database, and as well develop and implement a cyber risk management framework. The Accra Initiative Secretariat was established during the year. The initiative is an effort of 5 ECOWAS member states, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, and Burkina Faso, at sharing intelligence to combat and counter terrorism and associated criminal activities. In 2022, government will continue with the retooling of the intelligence agencies, the military, and departments and agencies under the Ministry of Interior, especially the police, with modern tools and software for improved communication and enhanced intelligence collection and analysis, including an armada of drones to protect our borders. In addition, we will pursue a policy of expansion of surveillance capabilities through the installation of more CCTV cameras systems nationwide. Mr. Speaker, this budget is crucial for a sustained recovery and transformation to a Ghana beyond aid and an entrepreneurial nation. It requires a careful realignment and rebalancing of our needs, our wants, and aspirations as a nation. This will also require burden sharing and the promotion of an entrepreneurial culture. We have extensively engaged and built partnerships of trust for the implementation of the policies presented in this budget. Mr. Speaker, this budget has outlined the plans of His Excellency the President and his government to continue tackling the devastating impact of the pandemic on our economy and the fiscal impact on our debt sustainability efforts. We have committed to bold and credible revenue and expenditure measures to achieve a new and more sustainable macro-fiscal balance, a path of fiscal consolidation to ensure access to international capital markets, empower the private sector to expand and create jobs, an unprecedented and historic comprehensive 10 billion CD initiative to improve access to finance skills and promote entrepreneurship amongst our youth and to support the private sector. Continued implementation of our flagship programs to improve the living standards of our people, strategic investments through the Obatampa program to revitalize and transform the structure of our economy, and initiatives, Mr. Speaker, to advance digitalization to boost efficiency in our transactions. So, Mr. Speaker, the enablers of digitalization and ICT economy, finance, and skills training are boldly illustrated in this budget. Having steered our nation through the most difficult and uncertain period in our country's history and the worst crisis since World War II globally, and with Ghanaians renewing their mandate for His Excellency the President, I can assure you that the commitment of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to improve the living standards of fellow Ghanaians and to create a self-confident country that is in charge of its destiny remains his #1 priority. Mr. Speaker, he cannot do it alone. He will count on us standing with him to achieve Ghana's manifest destiny with greatness. Mr. Speaker, in his book, The Songbird, Tony DeMello tells the following story. A man found an eagle's egg and put it in the nest of a barnyard hen. The eaglet hatched with a brood of chicks and grew up with them. All his life, the eagle did what the barnyard chicks did, thinking he was a barnyard chick. He scratched the air for worms and insects, he cracked and cackled, and he would thrash his wings and fly a few feet into the air. Years passed, and the old eagle grew very old. One day he saw a magnificent bird above him in the cloudless sky. It glided in graceful majesty among the powerful wind currents, with scarcely a beat of its strong golden wings. The old grounded eagle looked up in awe. "Who is that?" he asked. "That's the eagle, the king of the birds," said his neighbor. "He belongs to the sky, we belong to the earth, we are chickens." So the eagle lived and died a chicken, for that's what he thought he was. Mr. Speaker, we are eagles. We must eschew language of poverty of aspiration and reject the 10 spies who want us to go back to Egypt. We are God's people, meant for greatness, and let us fly. Mr. Speaker, we promised to reduce the suffering of Ghanaians when we came into office, and we did just that when we came into office. Specifically, let me tell you what the government of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has done. We reduced electricity tariff cumulatively by 10.9% compared to a cumulative increase of 264% under the NDC. We provided free water for households for April, May, and June of 2020. We doubled the capitation grant from 4.5 to 10 cedis. We established the Nation Builders Corps of 100,000 graduates to build the job skills of our graduates to be absorbed into the workforce. We created jobs and stopped the freeze on recruitment in the public sector. Over 295,000 people were recruited. We abolished fees for postgraduate medical training in Ghana. We increased the share of DSL to persons with disabilities by 50%. We exempted carrier from market tolls. We ensured the implementation of our pledge of employing 50% of the persons who manage the country's toll booths from among persons with disabilities. We expanded the LEAP by 150,000 beneficiaries. We expanded school feeding program from 1.6 billion children to 3.4, and now increasing it to over 4 million. We were able to restore teacher and nurses training allowance. We abolished the 3-month pay policy for teachers. We absorbed the cost of BEC and WASI term exam registrations. We abolished or reduced 15 taxes, including excise duty on petroleum, VAT on financial services, real estate, domestic airline tickets, etc. We made it easier to apply for a common passport. We made it easier to apply for a license. We made it easier and quicker to apply for and obtain pensions in 10 days. We made it easier to buy electricity from your mobile phone. We made it easier to apply for scholarships. We made it easier to send and receive money through mobile money interoperability. We made it easier to open a traditional bank account using your Ghana card. No guarantor is now required to obtain student loans. The Ghana card is sufficient. We reduced corruption associated with obtaining public services by digitization of service delivery. We saved the NHIS from collapse by reducing arrears to service providers. We provided 600 million COVID fund for small businesses. We made it easier for the renewal of NHIS membership through mobile phones. We made it easier to register a business. We made it easier to clear goods from the ports through the paperless process. We made it easier to apply for a construction permit. We have reduced inflation. We have reduced bank lending rates. We have reduced depreciation of the cedi, allowance of security personnel at UN peacekeeping missions increased from $31 to $35. We have spent $21 billion to save the deposits of 4.7 million depositors. We have implemented free TVET. Mr. Speaker, let us remember what we have achieved with 2 fish and 5 loaves even in these 5 years, and strive boldly, Mr. Speaker, and confidently to build our entrepreneurial nation. It is remarkable, Mr. Speaker, what we have been able to do with our debt in these 5 years. We have implemented, of course, the free senior high school initiative. Mr. Speaker, while we have not eliminated suffering, we have done more in terms of social intervention than any other government since 1992. And certainly more in this regard than the NDC governments. We will therefore continue to work towards mitigating the burdens imposed on by the global impact of COVID-19 on Ghanaians, as we also commit to tackle the social ills of expenditure control, corruption, recurring leakages, and low productivity. We shall work with labor and employers to institute a national labor conference to promote productivity in all its forms. Mr. Speaker, with his renewed mandate, His Excellency the President is resolute that in the next 3 years he will establish a stronger and more stable economy, an entrepreneurial nation that empowers young people to be bold, innovative, proactive, and dynamic to contribute to the transformation of our country. Mr. Speaker, in addition to continuing the implementation of our flagship programs, we will scale up interventions under the 100 billion Ghana Obatampa program, especially in agriculture and industrial sectors, and the Youth Start agenda. In 2022, Mr. Speaker, through this budget, we will activate the 10 billion Youth Start program nationwide to promote skills and entrepreneurship among our youth. We will continue to support the private sector to expand and provide employment opportunities for our people. We will build up our financial architecture to be responsible and to be world-class. We will prioritize the completion of ongoing projects in health, education, and the housing sectors to drive social mobility and transformation. We will leverage of the AFCFTA Secretariat to become a regional hub in all sectors of the economy. Among others, we will continue to ramp up our revenue mobilization efforts to enable us secure quality living standards. We will continue to subject all public public expenditure to thorough justification in line with the PFM Act to ensure value for money for every cedi spent. We will aggressively continue with road construction to connect communities, markets, and people. We'll continue to advance digitalization to improve convenience for Ghanaians and create a modern, efficient, digitized economy. We'll continue to promote science, technology, and innovation to build competencies for a resilient future. We'll continue to reposition our economy through our regional hubs program to optimize the opportunities in the sub-region and continent. We'll continue, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that our climate policies and our gender policies are first class. We'll continue to resource our security agencies to defend and protect Ghana and Ghanaians. We'll continue to reform the energy sector, promote climate resilience, and drive the adaptation of renewable energy technologies. Mr. Speaker, Scripture teaches us that the process of building a nation is in phases. We learn from the story of the biblical Israel that life in the wilderness is very different from the promised land. In the desert, God freely provided for the necessities of the young nation: food, water, clothing. When the nation transitioned into their promised land, God enabled them to cultivate farms and build enterprises for themselves and their country. We, Mr. Speaker, can draw lessons from this ancient story for our national quest. Building on the foundations laid by the earlier MPP government of President John Kufuor, the current MPP administration, under the bold and visionary leadership of President Akufo-Addo, has revamped their economy, enhanced social mobility, strengthened our democratic credentials, and illuminated the Black Star like no one else since independence. Today, we want to lead our young men and women to their promised land, an entrepreneurial nation of burden sharers. It is time to cross the Jordan, and as FDR said in his inaugural address, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. With the interventions we offer through this budget and with our understanding of burden sharing, we shall unleash a new cadre of entrepreneurs and nation builders. We want to thank this august House, Mr. Speaker, for the continuous support we have been receiving over the years. We will count on you for approval and support to implement the budget for the transformation of our country. We are also appreciative of the numerous stakeholders for providing useful insights and perspectives in shaping this budget. So as we end, Mr. Speaker, let us ask Jehovah to bless us and keep us. Let Jehovah make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Jehovah lift his countenance upon us and give us peace, and bless us his children and our nation Ghana to be great and strong. Mr. Speaker, I present to you the Ajinkwa budget. Right as well, Speaker, I pledge to move.
Honorable members, order. Honorable members, I'm going to start mentioning names. Order! Honourable members, in accordance with the standing orders, Order 143.